Good day, fellow champions of inclusion. I am AA Ron, and this is the Inclusive Dad Podcast, where we explore inclusion and make it practical. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join me in exploring the ways we can create a more inclusive world together. You are important, you matter, and you can make a difference. Today, my guest is Jenna Udenberg. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Aaron.
Absolutely. Did I pronounce your last name right?
You did. Awesome job.
There we go. That's what I also forget sometimes. Like I don't ask how to pronounce it, and I just butcher it. Hey, we're good. Why don't you just start us off and just tell me a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so born and raised up in Two Harbors, Minnesota, on the beautiful Lake Superior. I was inspired to become a middle school band director by my middle school band director, who is a champion in my life story, and went to a local university, became a double major. I added vocal music education to my journey because I knew that my body, dealing with juvenile idiopathic arthritis since the age of 7, that life choices weren't always my own. So I was proactive in my career selection. I was a music educator for over 19 years, and then the pandemic kind of changed that for me. So I'm on a disability retirement just because of all my immunocompromising things. And so since then, I've become a published author of the book Within My Spokes, and I started a nonprofit called Above and Beyond with You. So I'm doing disability advocacy and accessibility and inclusion work up here on the shore and beyond.
That's great. So yeah, like we talked about before we started recording, I live in southern Minnesota, so I'm familiar with Two Harbors. My partner, her birthday's in September, so last year we rented a little Airbnb north of Grand Marais and spent a week up there on the North Shore. Drove up to Canada because she'd never driven into Canada, so it's beautiful up there.
Absolutely. What a great time to be on the shore for sure. Hopefully you got to see all the peak colors and all that right around there.
I think it was just starting because we went up to Lutsen. Is that the ski place?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, we went up to Lutsen, went up the chairlift, and it was just started. You could see some stuff up there, but like the rest of it hadn't really started turning yet at that time. We were like right before it, I think, or something. But the weather was beautiful. Every morning I woke up and went down to the shore of Lake Superior and watched the sunrise over the horizon, which was pretty cool. So
awesome.
Yeah, Austin has cornfields, so it's a little bit nicer stuff to look at up there.
Oh, my favorite place is Decorah, Iowa. So I'm all about the cornfields and the bluffs and all that too. So
yeah, I went to college in Winona, right along the river too. So, but yeah, the bluffs that's pretty nice to look at too.
Absolutely.
Sure. What is your definition of inclusion?
I love that you asked this question. I've been thinking about it since I got your email, and some of the keywords that I came up with is having a sense of community and belongingness, and that you get to be your authentic self. You don't have to be the superhero of accessibility rights and disability rights and all the things. You just get to come and be you. Obviously, it's a safe space, and it's some place that you are celebrated and valued, and that you just get to be.
Yeah.
And like all your basic needs are met, because so often we're in spaces where it's the environment that's making us more disabled, not our disease or accident or disabling condition. So
yeah, that's very true. So you how long have you used a wheelchair?
So I was diagnosed at age 7, and I've been in a wheelchair since age 8. So actually, today's February 25th, right?
Yes.
So today is actually I have to do basic math here, 37th anniversary of my diagnosis date. So just putting that together.
Okay. How is Two Harbors or the North Shore for like accessibility in a wheelchair?
It definitely was a struggle growing up. I would say there are still pockets of places that are struggling, but I'm encouraged by new leadership, new ways of thinking, new training that's happening. And I see a lot of growth within the state of Minnesota, whether it's the DNR or MnDOT or any of the larger agencies, as well as all the way down to the most local, smallest businesses, like embracing the fact that they need to be accessible and inclusive. And even if they physically can't because of the old architecture or infrastructure, they're willing to, to do curbside pickup, or they're willing to bring different things out, or so, we're doing what we can with what we have and trying to make things better at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you're just talking about curbside pickup, but I was thinking, I mean, in some ways, COVID, some of the things that came out of it make it better for, somebody that's in a wheelchair, like curbside pickup, like you're saying, or different slight changes like that where wasn't as available before. Now it's kind of more of the norm. We order our groceries from Walmart and just go pick them up, which kind of started around that time, but it's a lot easier for us and, somebody who's not able to get out as much too. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, as we say, like, there's so many silver linings of the pandemic and how the whole world had a shift for a time.
Right.
And yet it's kind of sad in some ways how the world is like pretending that never happened, or they don't want to keep offering those services, which there's a whole, reason and finances and all the things behind it. Like, I get it, but just accepting the fact that it was more of a universal design approach because we were all in the same bucket with the same needs.
For sure. I mean, when we were up along the North Shore, our plan was to, go hiking at a lot of the state parks. And my partner, her back was hurting, so we couldn't do as much as we wanted to. So we were trying to find, more accessible trails or easier trails to still go see, like waterfalls or nice things. So we found a couple, but I mean, how do you find like the accessibility for accessing all like the state parks and the things up along the North Shore?
Yeah, so Split Rock Lighthouse State Park has a track chair, and so I got to do some work with their promotional day and those kinds of things. So that was awesome.
Yep.
Haven't been on the beach, let alone that specific beach, ever before. So that was a really cool experience. For my manual wheelchair, I have what is called a Rio Mobility Firefly. So it turns my chair pretty much into like a 3-wheeled scooter.
Oh, okay.
And so that provides a ton of new adventures and accessibility. On the shore, I love the Gitchigami State Trail. They're just a great, not only trail, but a great nonprofit organization to work with, and are super inclusive and, value the feedback that I and others give them. And their understanding of needing to promote what is under older ADA code and what's under newer ADA code, and trying to just promote that so people can make the decision for themselves if something's accessible.
Yeah.
I love being able to visit some parks, or I shouldn't say parks, but like going into Iona's beach. I haven't been actually on the beach yet because I would love to use a beach chair or figure out a way to get like a Moby mat on some of our local beaches, because I think that would be the next step of inclusion for more people to experience our beautiful North Shore in a safe manner.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's because we ended up going the park that's right on the Canadian border. They had a pretty nice paved trail that wasn't too bad to go see a waterfall there. And then there's a couple waterfalls kind of right. I mean, you pull off the road and you could see them pretty close. We ended up going to those. So we tried to find ones that we knew were close. I've been up there a few years ago and walked to some waterfalls that were way back in the woods and had like 200 steps to get down there. And they weren't joking. There was a lot of steps. And I was like, we're not going to those, but trying to find those ones where you could still go to stuff and get to there easily. So, and I mean, like even the Gooseberry Falls, I mean, as a kid, when I was a kid, that was not as nice as it is now. I mean, that's pretty nice too, to be able to get to the waterfall and that stuff. So, or get near it. So,
yeah. And I love at Gooseberry, I've been told that they've redone their switchback trail so you can get to the lower falls. I had a friend help me get through the old trail a couple summers ago, and that was quite the adventure.
Yeah.
But yeah, super great. And I love the connection to get up to the Gitch from Gooseberry State Falls as well. But yeah, like when you said the high falls up north, by the Canadian border, that is a magnificent waterfall with the paved trail, but then also the boardwalk, which gets a little tight depending on what time of year you go to see that amazingness. But
that was a fun one.
Absolutely. And it's super funny. One trip up the shore, we always tend to look to the right to see beautiful Lake Superior. And I've lived here for my 44, almost 45 years of life.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, my passenger with me, for whatever reason, we look to the left at Beaver Bay and to the left at Cross River, and we're like, there's waterfalls right there. We've lived here for like 40 plus years and we've never seen it. And it's like, just look to the left. It's not always about Lake Superior at the right.
Yeah. No, that is true. There is a lot to look at, though. I mean, it's like I said in Austin, it's flat, so we don't. I mean, it's just I'm up there, and I'm always looking all over the place. And we were there, I think, when some salmon are coming out of Lake Superior up into the creek. So we stopped somewhere, and I don't remember where it was, but there was just salmon in pools, and there were tons of people fishing, which is kind of cool because I never saw that before. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Why is disability not a bad word?
It is not a bad word because it impacts all of us. And so we've just had that societal stigma for so long that it's about the things we can't do. And, like I was recently giving a talk and, people kept using the verbiage of wheelchair bound. And I don't see my wheelchair as something that I'm bound to. It's something that gives me freedom and it helps me live and thrive in a life that I choose and in, just being a contributing member of society in an actual, authentic, real way. And so it's really just flipping that script. And there's been so much ableism, even in my own world, like because I've been rural growing up and because the disability population back in the 80s and 90s was, we were kind of put away or people were institutionalized or all the horrific things that are a part of our culture's history. And so until we can get a louder voice, until we can get all the voices at the table, all the stakeholders at the table, it's just been seen as that. So I love what, again, going back to the silver linings of the pandemic, hopping online, finding people all across our nation, all across our state, all across the world that have similar stories that we're finding representation in, that we can band together to just live the life, right? And learn from each other and share with each other. And sometimes it's amazing and other times they're hard stories, but there's so much to learn and such growth.
Yeah, I mean, part of the disability discussion that I like to bring up is just, if you live your full life, into normal life expectancy, there's a pretty good chance you're going to have at least a short-term disability or something you need help with during your lifetime. So, I think it's something we need to talk about more that, you go out in your car, get an accident. You could just have a disability at that point. It can change quickly. And I don't think we talk about that enough. Like it probably will affect your life in some way at some point. So we need to, like you're saying, focus on what we can do, not what you can't do, and make it more of a common thing that we talk about for sure.
Right. And the other side of that too is the disability minority. We are the most diverse populist group that is there because you can enter our community and culture at any moment for a variety of reasons.
Absolutely.
And when, almost 25% of Americans identify as being disabled, and yet it's so funny. I was having a conversation with some older friends and they're like, well, we don't use that word. We just say we're getting older. So, by people that are self-selecting as identifying, the disability population in America is much larger than 25%.
Yeah. So growing up on the North Shore, did you see any other, kids, people your age in wheelchairs?
Yeah, there were several students with me that were not mainstreamed, but were in the DCD classroom. And then there was two that used Lofstrand crutches and another that used a power chair that were mainstream students, but no students that were as active as I was in different clubs and band and choir and, all the different activities. So that was the struggle. And I faced a lot more, I would say, discrimination from leaders and teachers and such, because all they had ever known was folks that were more in and out of a DCD type classroom. And so then when I would come in full fledged expecting things or just showing up as myself,
Right.
it rubbed the wrong way several times, but eventually we got there, and I
Okay.
just learned how to self-advocate at a very young age.
Sure. Did you have an IEP or not?
I did.
Okay.
But it
How
was
it?
very funny because I was the different disabled kid, I always had to have like the top echelon of people. So I didn't have like a local in-house teacher coordinator. I had like the person who was in charge of all the local districts. And even when I went to college, I didn't have like the usual mentor staff. I had like the head of the department because I was different at a big
Okay.
level. And I was like, I don't get it, but whatever. Like,
Right. Yeah, it's
systems are
interesting.
funny.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the reason I got into inclusion was my daughter, she qualifies as severely multiply impaired, so lots of categories, and
Okay.
I didn't know anything. I mean, growing up, I don't remember seeing anybody in a wheelchair, hearing the word disability, so I didn't know anything and just went along with what the school said, which meant she got sent to like the segregated classroom across town where kids with her needs went to. And then found out the kids in her class were folding towels and stuff like in first grade. And I was like, why are we already folding towels? Why are they not in math class or reading class? So, I mean, I understand what you're saying. There is like based on, somebody like being in a wheelchair or having autism or whatever the label might be, there's certain, mindsets around that. So that, that makes sense to me where you're in a wheelchair, so they kind of put you in this box, even though that's not even close to who you are. And then you have the challenges associated with that.
Right. And then that just being so foreign to you, because like,
Yeah.
I'm just living my life as a 7 to
Right.
18-year-old person, right? Like,
Right.
I know who I am internally as
Yep.
much as that age person can, but it's like,
Yeah.
what are you assuming about me?
Yeah. No, that's interesting.
Yep.
Yeah, we always had the higher ups too in our meetings, like the special ed director would be at most of my daughter's IEP meetings, which is, I mean, there's no way she's at all of them because there's lots of kids. So we had similar things.
Right.
When you keep bringing up things and questioning things, you kind of tend to get, the different people showing up at meetings, I think.
Right.
But yeah, that's interesting.
Yep.
Why does going above and beyond the ADA code matter? What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I've always coined the term, going above and beyond, and I didn't really know what that truly meant. But as I was a 2020 Bush Fellow, I was able to do more research of what truly is the ADA and how does it get changed. And now that I understand just a little bit more, there's so much to understand about the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Right. Yep.
But it's just a set of guidelines, and in order to get those to change to be at the level that current disabled people and future disabled people need, it's like an act of Congress, literally. Right. So there's just so many steps. So going above and beyond the code is like getting to know your population and getting to know the people you're serving and what truly are their needs. Because if you do a Google search of, well, how high do the handrails need to be in a bathroom? You get like anywhere from a 6 to 12 inch, threshold of where they could be. And so it's like, if you're not living the life and you don't understand universal design and the spirit of the ADA, then everybody just does the bare minimum. And at least when I was growing up, it was usually like, well, we did this and Jenna never came, or we did this special event with these special things and then Jenna didn't come. And it was like, no, don't put the target and the expectation on a specific person. Right. Your whole event, your whole space, your whole everything should have the least barriers. Yep. So as many people can come and be successful with whatever you're offering.
Yeah.
And so I think in my journey, I'm so tired of being considered a checklist. And I feel like the ADA becomes a checklist to so many people. And we're not, right? Because we're a whole human, we're a whole family, we're a whole community that has needs just like everybody else. They might look a little different. They might come to fruition in a different, very nonlinear way many times, but they need to be acknowledged. And so when I talk about that with local businesses or other agencies, they're like, wait, we can do more than that? We don't have to have a ramp that's a 1-to-12 ratio. We could do like a 1-to-20. Like, yes, and yes, please, because that is way more friendly to all of us.
Right.
So,
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It is, like you said, that is kind of I consider like the least amount you can do. You can do more, but that makes a lot of sense. And like, if you put a ramp in, that helps not only people in wheelchairs, but older people with walkers, parents with strollers. It helps way more people have access to buildings than just somebody in a wheelchair too. So,
right.
And the thing about the ADA that I, like to bring up as well is I think some people think, they hear there's the ADA, so they just assume everything's accessible. And I talk about that because my partner, we've been together for around 3 years, and she's told me many times, like before, I was with you and around your daughter. I heard there was the ADA, and I just assumed everything was, good. And she's been with me and my daughter. We try to go to a concert, and they don't have a way to get there. They have to pull out their homemade, wooden ramp with a hole in it to get into the parking lot to go to, listen to music, or, checking all the places we're going to go listen to, music, just to make sure, like, is it accessible? Do we have to buy extra seats? Does it come with it? Just all these extra things. So I think that's also part of it. There's a law. That doesn't mean everything there's curb cuts everywhere or everything is accessible. So
yeah, and I try to remind people that the ADA is the greatest unfunded mandate the federal government has ever put forward. So here's this law, go and do.
Yep.
But there's no support, no other resources, nothing to make it happen. And it passed in 1990, so we're going to be 35 years past, and there's still federal places, public places, let alone private sector that,
and I've heard from, people that use wheelchairs also, like the ADA standards for like what they call accessible, like stall in the bathroom, are way too small. Like you can't even, some people have to, put their wheelchair outside to close the doors, or you can't close the doors and use it. So, some of it, like you're saying, is okay, this is what it says, but now let's have somebody in a wheelchair. Like, is that enough? Does it need to be bigger? What actually makes sense? So that's a great point.
Well, and our durable medical equipment has so changed, right?
That's true too,
you can go and get a power chair that is as tiny as a manual chair or as ginormous as a scooter. And so it's like, and then you have the 4-wheeled rollator walkers where you have, so all of that whole world has just changed, but so many of the guidelines haven't caught up.
Yeah, for sure. Why is accessibility and inclusion important?
Oh boy, do we have like 12 days to talk or more. The bare bones is the more that I am in disability culture and community, the more I realize how awesome and diverse and just beautiful it is, right? So there are so many creative folks. Like, we always want to go back to like Einstein and I'm drawing a blank, but we try to come up with all these big names of people that were disabled, and it's like, but there's these cool people in Austin, Minnesota, and there's these cool people in Two Harbors, and there's these cool people in Duluth, and like all over the state, and it's like there is so much power and beauty in the art, in the stories. Like, everybody's story matters, whether you're disabled or non-disabled, and so helping people feel that valued and finding that inclusion, because otherwise we're just siloed. And it's like, well, there's Jenna's story. Well, there's Aaron's story. Well, there's, this problem, but it only impacts one of our constituents. Right. And it's like, no, those stories all intertwine in a tapestry called life. And we all are interdependent and dependent on each other. So the quicker that we realize that and the impact that we have on each other, I think the better and more holistic we get to be.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Talk a little bit about your book. Like, how was it writing your book? Why did you want to write your book?
Yeah, so I've been told for decades, like, Jenna, you need to write a book. You need to write a book. And I'm like, okay. So when the pandemic hit and teaching was no longer, and I just said, all right. And so I had a good friend that helped me coin I don't know, with the blurred screen, if you can see it or not. There kind of is.
Yeah.
So within my spokes was a verbiage that a friend of mine and I came up with. The picture from the cover is actually at a local disability camp in Minnesota. I was at my good friend's wedding, and my other friend was just snapping pictures. And I was like, I really love that picture. So let's
Right.
see what that looks like as my cover.
Yeah.
It took me about a year to write it. I had a great coach through my self-publishing organization I was working with, and she's like, write the stories when you have the mental capacity and the heart capacity to write them. And so it's my whole journey of being diagnosed. It's my journey of going through a depression where I wanted to end my life because of the pain and disabling environments I found myself in. To the story of, overcoming all of that and finding freedom and becoming a bush fellow and finding the Firefly, which opened up a whole new outdoor adventure way, which has been great for my mental health and great for my physical health and creating new relationships and new friendships that just see the world in a much different way just from being out on the trails together.
That's great. What's Firefly?
Firefly is that third wheel electric attachment.
Oh, yeah.
From Real Mobility.
Gotcha. Yeah. Gotcha. Talk about the bush fellow thing. How did you get it? How did you find out about it? Why did you want to do it?
That kind of there's more detail in my book, but okay. the gist of it is I was Blandon community leader, part of their cohort back in 2017. Sure. And so a leader at the Northland Foundation reached out to me and said, Jenna, have you ever considered going to BushCon? And I was like, what in the world is BushCon? And so I was selected by them to go to BushCon. And then when we were there, he's like, so have you ever thought about the Bush Fellowship? And I'm like, what in the world is the Bush Fellowship? And so it's a leadership personal development journey, and they select, it used to be 26. I think they're up to 30 now, every year. And it's for people in North Dakota, South Dakota, and Minnesota, and the 23 tribal nations that are in that geographic region. And they get hundreds, if not close to 1,000 applicants every year. And so it's quite the intensive process. During my journey, I was connected with two, you don't want to say former bush fellows, because once a fellow, always a fellow, but previous ladies, one from Grand Marais and one from up on the range. And they were just instrumental in being mentors. And they would always just keep encouraging me by saying, Jenna, just go through the application process. You're going to learn more about yourself and more about what you believe and who you are as a leader, just applying. So anybody listening that's in that geographic region, I would strongly suggest going to the Bush Foundation website and just going through those questions and applying, because you don't know. And so for that 2 years, it was amazing. Unfortunately and fortunately, we applied and were accepted before the pandemic hit, but our actual fellowship started in June of 2020. So here we were dreaming bigger, doing all these things from 2019 to 2020, and all of us had travel plans. So I've never flown as a wheelchair user or ever in my life. And I had plans to go to, I think it was a place in Florida. I think it was Anna Maria Island. Another local disability advocate and her husband went there, and they're like, we were asked by this barista how they thought of our accessibility of our city. And they're like, nobody has ever asked us that. And they're like, yeah, we do feel weird. And then they answered her and they went, wait, we haven't had any barriers. And she's like, right, because this is what our city has done. And this is the process we went through. And there's power buttons everywhere. And all bathrooms are accessible. And all these businesses have gone through training and la, 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 la. And I was like, wow, how cool to feel weird on vacation. Yeah. To go there. So I'm like, I need to go there. I need to interview people. I need to see how they did it so we can replicate that. Right. I had plans to go out to Berkeley, California, because I'm like, I want to wheel where all of these greats like Ed Roberts and others have wheeled and fought for Section 504 and, go to all these things. I wanted to go to Champaign-Urbana to one of the biggest rehab facilities and camps and all the things. And I wanted to do the grand thing of going to Sweden, that has been named for many years as the most accessible country in the world. And then the pandemic hit. And I was like, okay, so now I have to grieve over that. And then people are like, it's okay. Like, just put it on hold. Like, wait a year or 2 or 3 or 4.
Right.
But that was when I had the experience of having an invisible disability because of being immunocompromised by my disease and by multiple medications. It was like, people aren't seeing that side of who Jenna is. And I wasn't either. Like, we'll figure it out. You can lift me. You can carry me, even though I don't like that anymore.
Right.
But you can't safeguard your immune system and your overall health in great ways. Yeah. So yeah, it was a great process. I encourage people to go for it and just be ready to dream big and then have those dreams dashed and then come up with a new dream, because I was able to connect with a lot of people virtually and I didn't have to go anywhere, and I could spend the money on other things that now are helping me be a better leader long term.
Yeah. Sounds very interesting.
Yeah.
Is it bush like in the bushes I know, like the president's bushes, or not those ones?
It is not those ones, and it also is not Bush's baked beans.
There you go.
It's another Bush family who is very philanthropic, and his first name is Archie, and I can't remember his wife's name. But if you go to the Bush Foundation website, you'll get to learn all about them, and they're just really cool people.
Yeah.
Still doing a lot of good.
Talk about your organization, Above and Beyond with You, and what that is and what you do with that organization.
Yeah, so we're a nonprofit. We're going to be entering into our 3rd year in April. It's, of course, Above and Beyond goes in regards to, like we already talked about, going above and beyond ADA code. With You is a nod towards my teacher name, because with Udenberg, little music kindergartners could not spit that out.
Yeah.
So my kids gave me the nickname Miss You, which still works today as I coach Lego robotics. And so we just merged both of them together. During the pandemic, when I was going through that struggle of who am I now and identity of teaching being gone, I was given the verbiage of accessibility educator. So it's been really cool in the last 3 years to figure out what does that look like and what does that mean. But I think that's what makes our organization interesting and different and unique, is because our board members of 9 all have some kind of connection to the education world. And so we come to the table for training and consulting and doing site audits and other things in services that we provide. Is we just come to it with a more whole approach, a more universal design approach, thinking about all the different students and families we've served and all of their different needs, versus just having somebody with their one lived disabled experience. Or I've heard of other disability nonprofits and for-profits, like they know ADA super well and they're great at consulting in that sense, but they have nobody on staff that has the lived life. And so there's at least 2 of our 9 folks that lived the disabled life every single day. And so I think that also makes us very unique. And our goal is to partner alongside. So with is huge, and that's why it's much larger in our logo, because so often it's like, oh, well, I hired this consultant and we did the thing and now we're done. But as being the inclusive dad, you know that that's not successful, right? You need that long-term relationship. You need that partnership. You need that mentorship. So that's what we hope to offer all of our partners.
Yeah, I love that. What is one tip you can share to help the listeners be more inclusive today? Just something simple they can start today to be more inclusive.
So for those that are disabled or the ones that are finding themselves with needs, I would say, number 1, don't quit. Number 2, find your people. And number 3, be able to articulate your needs and remember that everybody has needs. And for those that are non-disabled, I would say, ask curious questions. don't make assumptions about an accommodation someone needs, or why somebody can or cannot attend, or that something is or isn't accessible. That's for the person who has those needs to determine for themselves. And it might work one day for them and it might not work later on that same day for them. So being honest and understanding, but asking curious questions goes a long way.
Oh, that's a great answer. Is there anything you want to talk about that we haven't talked about yet? We covered a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna say we've covered a lot of it. Yeah, just thanks for this opportunity, and it's exciting to get to know more about you and your family and your lived experience, and hear all the awesome things you guys are doing in southern Minnesota. So
yeah, for sure. Where's the best place everybody can connect with you?
aboveandbeyondwithyou.org is our website. Otherwise, you can do Jenna, Jenna, at aboveandbeyondwithyou.org. That's the email. But ways to connect, ways to donate, ways to get involved are all found on our website. And you can also find us on Facebook and Instagram as well.
Awesome. Ready for the last question?
Sure.
Do you like Spam lunch meat? Yes or no?
I do, but it's got to be grilled.
Yep. No,
yeah. What's your favorite way of Spam?
Same way.
Okay.
Well, I mean, not necessarily grilled, but like sliced and at least fried up, so it's cooked.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember growing up, Mom would chop it into like little cubes and throw it into like a macaroni salad, but I have not had it that way in quite a while. So now if we have it, we will slice it up, cook it, or like put it on the frying pan and then have like that with pancakes or something. Usually is how we have eaten it recently. So
nice. Or dice it up and kind of turn it into a breakfast hash. Or
yeah.
I think my mom used to put it on her homemade rye bread toast and then like a slice of like cranberry. So lots of different amazing ways.
There you go. Yeah, I've been asking that question to all my guests just for something kind of fun, since I live in Austin, where the Spam Museum is, just to see what the reactions are. Usually it's pretty fast yes or pretty fast no. There's not a lot of like thinking too much about it.
Right. I was amazed in the museum how many different flavor profiles and countries it's in. Yep. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Spam and ramen. All right.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually kind of a fun place to go. There's a lot of history, a lot of cool history stuff and different things, so it was fun.
It's fun. Absolutely.
And I saw in January that last year there was 100,000 people came, over 100,000, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, and I loved their accessibility, and I remember power doors and a pretty nice accessible bathroom. At least it worked for me, and and different things you get to hit for audio versions of reading things for you and those kinds of things. So yeah, really good.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. I look forward to connecting again.
Absolutely. To those listening, thank you for allowing me to be part of your journey. It is truly an honor. Please join the podcast newsletter by clicking on the link in the episode description to keep up with the latest episodes. Together, we can make the world more inclusive. Until next time, stay empowered and be a champion for inclusion.